All right, guys, can we start? Am I audible to all of you? Yes. Okay. Okay, guys. So we did with social system. Any doubts? Or tell me, guys, who can explain that theory? Right? We used to do that exercise, but I'll for sure appreciate you if you can do that when it comes to Parsons theory of social system. Action, somebody was explaining yesterday, that was quite well. So who can explain the theory of social system? Yeah, Abby, you did last time. Anyone else? You just did. Jiva already did, right? Parshuram, you also did. Okay. Who else can do? Harkrit is there. Who can explain? Okay. Sayanti, can you do it? Or Abby? Any one of you can do it. Okay. Do one thing. First, start with Sayanti and then go with Abby. You can divide and you can explain the theory. Okay. Let me ask you, Nayan, have you done with the definition? You learn the definition, or what is your plan? Are you there? No. What do you have decided? You're going to go with which definition? You will learn. Okay, all right. You will learn both. Okay, that's better. Okay, Saindi, go ahead. Okay, just let me unmute all of you. Yeah, you can.
Hello, good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
According to Parsons, the social system.
First, tell me how it should be. When you are explaining the theory of social system, what all things should be there in your answer, and then we will proceed with that.
So first, we will write the definition,
and then
we will go with the certain conditions that for a system to exist. That one.
Yes.
Then why after definition it was not enough, so he went for the detail of the theory part. So in that, functional theory of the social system, 2 parts: maintenance of the social system and the functions fulfilled by the particular system.
After that,
and then in that also we have the maintenance of the social system, that is also divided in 2 parts: moving equilibrium and the requisite equilibrium.
No, maintenance is actually related to moving equilibrium or the mechanism equilibrium phase. Function fulfilled by the system is what? Requisite functionalism. Actually, the theory is having 2 parts. The first part that we address is related to mechanism equilibrium phase, that is a moving equilibrium. Second part of the theory is the Agile model, that is the requisite functionalism phase. That is nothing but the functions fulfilled by the system. So the theory is actually having 2 parts. One is how the system is maintained, and the second is what are the functions fulfilled by the system. That is what you will see in terms of moving equilibrium, and then the Agile model, or the mechanism equilibrium phase and the requisite functionalism phase. And then one more is there. That is the last one.
So cybernetic
hierarchy of control. Okay, now just go with the definition. I don't want that complicated definition. The other one.
Yes, sir. So any action that is oriented towards others, that leads to mutual reciprocity, and that leads to the interaction, and it should be then it should go with the social system. So we have 3 in that. We have 3, that is common goals, norms and values, and abstract boundary. If these are fulfilled, then we say that a social system exists.
Okay, so basically, if any action, if it is oriented towards some other person and are in a state of mutual reciprocity, interaction takes place. And this interaction will lead to a system if the conditions, what are the conditions? There should be a common goal with the interacting individual, and there should be some norms and values, and there should be an abstract boundary around them. Then that lead to social system. And I've also given you the definition, which is actually given by Parsons, consisting of plurality of individual actors interacting with each other in a situation which is having at least physical or environmental aspect, actors who are motivated in terms of tendency to optimization of gratification and all those things. Okay, and then this is a definition. Okay, next part.
Then we have certain conditions for a system to exist. First, interaction, then social situation, collective goals, motivation, Then we have the common values or the role consensus of the role expectation, and the abstract boundary.
Okay. This is what actually we discussed before also. It is the same thing only. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Then, according to Parsons, it was not only important for giving the definition, it was not his only goal. It was also important for him to give the theory. So in that, we have the functional theory of social system, in which we have the maintenance of social system and functions fulfilled by the particular system. In the maintenance of social system, we have moving equilibrium. According to that theory, Parsons tries to say that in any society, there is a perfect equilibrium is always maintained. There is a specific mechanism that fulfills certain needs, and the equilibrium is maintained. If any disturbance, any sort of disturbance occurs, then through feedback, again, specific mechanism is reached.
And then the equilibrium will be brought back. Right? How the disturbance is coming?
So, like for if in today's
no, that is example. That is example. I'm not talking about example. I'm talking about that reason why the disturbance is coming.
So, if flow is broken.
Which flow?
Energy flow.
There is interaction, right? Yeah, exchange is there. The interaction between the systems are in terms of exchanges, two exchanges, energy and information exchange. So if there is a break in the flow, the disturbance occur. Okay, Abby, next phase.
So from RFP, right?
Requisite functionalism.
Right. Okay. So after defining the mechanism equilibrium phase, Parsons wanted to define the function of the structure. He wanted to identify the functions of the structure as well. For that, he defined the requisite functional phase. So for requisite functional phase, he framed a model called AGIL, in which he called it action systems, in which he defined what are the different functions of the four.
Those are not action systems. Action system is different. This is these are actually nothing but the specific mechanisms that we have discussed just before in the moving equilibrium. Those specific mechanisms are nothing but fulfilling just 4 vital functions for the system, and that 4 vital 4 functions is what actually Parsons identified in terms of AGIL. And what are they? AGIL?
AGIL is
what are AGIL?
Is
what is this? Anyone else?
Adaptation, goal attainment, latency, or pattern maintenance.
No, this is not the kind of explanation I want. Anyone else who can do it?
So may I?
Go ahead.
So in requisite equilibrium, there are many
not requisite equilibrium.
4 functions, 4 functional requirements that AGIL
What is that
model.
phase? Not requisite equilibrium. So just correct it. What is that phase? What is the name of that phase? Second part.
Functions fulfilled by particular system.
You tell that name. Requisite equilibrium. You said you correct it first. What phase it is? First is moving equilibrium or the mechanism equilibrium. This is requisite equilibrium. No, it is not requisite equilibrium. It's a requisite functionalism phase. Okay, that's where he's actually discussing about the functions fulfilled by the system. Okay, what are the functions?
So A, adaptation. G is for goal attainment. I is for integration. L is for latency.
So basically, you just before discussed about the moving equilibrium. There we discussed about specific mechanism. It can be hundreds and thousands of mechanisms, right? And these thousands of mechanisms could be basically what is it can be understood in terms of 4 universal functional prerequisites. And that's what actually you just discussed now. These are the 4 universal functional prerequisites which is required for any system to survive. What are they? Adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency. Just go ahead. You don't want to explain what are these 4? Go ahead.
So I will explain. In adaptation, it is related to the economic system.
When in the context of society.
In the context of society, adaptation is related to the economic system. Goal attainment, it is in the context of political system. Integration, it is in the context of cultural part, and latency, it is related to the fiduciary system.
Family system. Okay.
Family system.
So, and then we have discussed that you can actually show that in a
Matrix.
form, like
Yes.
this, AGIL, right?
Yes, sir.
And then we have discussed that Parsons have taken it into a grand theory, right? By saying that if the adaptation requirement of a system which is fulfilled, which in turn will have, yeah, tell me. Suppose
So
the
which means
adaptation
they are all
requirement is,
interrelated, and
no,
in
no.
so a single system is also having further divisions, and
Yeah,
it
that
is
means if the adaptation requirement is met by a system, which in turn will have further functions, further functional requirements, right? For example, you just discussed about society, and you said that the adaptation requirement of society is fulfilled by what system?
economic system.
Economic system. So isn't that a system,
Yes,
right?
sir.
This is also a system, and for any system, this system also have what?
AGIL model.
AGIL requirement. That is
Yes.
what I have actually discussed here, that if the adaptation requirement of one system is met, which in turn will further have the 4 functional prerequisites, which can again be understood like this. And here also, one system will fulfill something, right? Even when you talked about goal attainment, you said that it is a political system, which is also a system. For example, this is political system, so which in turn will further have another adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency, correct? And then
Yes.
it will keep on going like this, right? It can further divide, you can further divide like this, and it will keep on going. And this is one of the criticism of Parsons, the circular arguments which is given, and it is endless. It cannot be tested. It is not empirical, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then what after this?
So then all the functional requirements, they are all interrelated. So we'll show it by
Interrelated
arrows.
means, then you can show it like this, right? These two are related, and then 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 you can show like this, right? And then like this, right? Correct, no? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then we have discussed what is the functional requirements of society. And then we have taken it to the abstract level, and I've explained also why and how action system can be considered as it is nothing but fulfilling the AGIL model only, or it is nothing but the abstractions of AGIL. Guys, there was a question which was related to this AGIL model. Explain the AGIL model of university. Okay, so you just need to, for society, I have explained it, and you just need to think about it. University, we can discuss that tomorrow. This was a question, and see, there is no fixed answer. In fact, if you have watched the video from the portal, I've told you to watch it after the session. So I have actually answered this question in that session. I don't know how many of you have watched it. If not, if you're watching the answer writing module, which is given to you, there also I have discussed the answer for this. And in the previous year question also, I have discussed the answer for this. In 3 different areas, the answer is discussed. So what I want you to do is you just think about it, okay? And then come with the idea, what are the AGIL requirement for a university? Now, it is not necessary that you will be getting a same answer. It is not possible. It's a social science, and we know it cannot be the similar ones, okay? The way you think, the way you understood theory, that's how it is going to be reflected in your answer, okay? So that is not a problem. If you have understood it correctly, and if you know this adaptation is related to something related to economic setup, and then goal attainment is something related to the political setup, so you may directly connect it with the finance department, maybe adaptation. And then here you may connect it with various governing bodies, right? And this latency part, you may connect it to some psychologist or counseling. But you just think about it, guys, and it is going to be interesting. So you will come to know to what extent you understood Parsons. So this is how it is. University which has been asked, they can ask you something else also. Okay, society is the example which I have given to you. So we understood that economic system, political system, and then cultural system, and then the family system. Now, if you think about university, it could be the finance department, it could be various governing bodies like Senate and all. And integration may be like inter-college festivals and all these programs which is conducted, that will lead to integration. Latency may be related to tension management, that is related to counseling, the psychologist, and all those things. Okay, so that is going to be very simple. But how to answer that? First, you need to explain what is AGIL, and then when you need to proceed, in the end only you'll be talking about this thing. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Anyone else can explain cybernetic hierarchy of control, guys? So many of you are there. What does this mean? You did not understood anything, or all of you are in library? Harpreet? Cybernetic hierarchy of control. Who can do that? No one. Is that difficult one? Cybernetic hierarchy of control. Okay. See, cybernetic hierarchy of control is nothing but which is related to the we have discussed different action systems, 4 action system, right? Personality system, organismic system, and all. So the action systems are in continuous interaction, and that interaction is actually in the form of exchanges. What kind of exchange? Energy exchange and information exchange. And we have discussed what is the source of energy, what is the source of information, and how and in what direction it flow, what is the hierarchy. So it is very important to maintain that hierarchy, and it is very important to maintain that direction. If there is a break in the flow, that break in the flow means if there is a change in the hierarchy order, or if there is a change in the direction, then there will be a disturbance. And this you need to now connect it with moving equilibrium. Now the disturbance came, so the feedback will be given, and then what will happen? The specific mechanisms will function, and then that will bring the equilibrium back. So this is actually the social change concept of Parsons. So this is what you need to write if you get a question on social system. Define properly, then go with the first part, that is the moving equilibrium or the mechanism equilibrium phase. And then the second part, that is nothing but the Agile model or the requisite functionalism phase. And towards the end, you need to briefly mention about cybernetic hierarchy of control. Now, guys, I will not be teaching you social change of Parsons separately. We did it already. It is nothing but cybernetic hierarchy of control. Along with moving equilibrium, you need to draw the diagram of cybernetic hierarchy of control, which we have discussed, that hierarchy and the flow. You also need to draw the diagram of moving equilibrium, which we have seen. So that is what actually explaining Parsons' theory of social change. So what are the questions which you can expect? Directly social system, which is going to be a lengthy one, or they can ask you moving equilibrium. You can see many times they have asked that. It is nothing but the mechanism equilibrium phase, or they will ask you simply Agile model, or this kind of questions like Agile model of university, Agile model of society, like that they can ask you. Or cybernetic hierarchy of control directly, or they can ask you social change. These are the different questions they can ask you. Any problem? So what we will do now is criticisms, refer the video. Okay, we will start with Merton. Now, when it comes to Merton, first understand the approach. What Merton did is, what do you know about Merton? Something related to, we have discussed about Merton already. He is understood, or he is considered as neo-functionalist, or the father of neo-functionalism. Why? Because there is some change which is going to be seen from Merton onwards within functionalism. So if you see so far, what all functionalists we have discussed? We discussed about Auguste Comte, though not in detail. We just mentioned about that. Some of you, if you are preparing for your state PCS, you need to prepare Auguste Comte, you need to prepare Herbert Spencer, Radcliffe Brown, Malinowski, and all. Right? We haven't discussed that because it is not part of our syllabus. But we briefly mentioned about this. Auguste Comte, functionalist, initial functionalist, positivist also. His approach was related to consensus. And then Herbert Spencer, we discussed, introduced structural functionalism. Emile Durkheim have taken it to at very good level, structural functionalism. He explained theories in more legitimate way using scientific methods, separating cause and function to avoid what? Illegitimate teleology. Okay. Yeah, correct. Okay. So to avoid illegitimate teleology, that is also structural functionalism. Then this guy, Radcliffe Brown, not important for us. That's related to anthropological functionalism. It is related to the purpose of existence and everything is what actually they're discussing about. And then Malinowski, that is related to individual functionalism. That is a theory of needs that is actually talking about. So you can see, and then we discussed about Parsons. In fact, Parsons have taken functionalism to its logical conclusion. That's what we just discussed now. Now, what Parsons say, you can explain anything, everything as system, and any system can be explained by using that theory. That's why it is a master analytical framework or a grand functional theory. So this is what functionalism so far. Comte to Spencer to Durkheim to Radcliffe Brown, Malinowski, Parsons. Right? Now, what Merton did is, for this functionalism that we have discussed so far, there are some criticisms. What are the criticisms, guys? Can you just mention some of the criticisms? What are the problems in these functionalism? Ignorance of conflict, right? That is one of the most important criticism. So dysfunctions are not taken into consideration. It is not necessary that everything is functional, right? So yeah, ignoring conflict or ignorance of dysfunction. And then the problem of illegitimate teleology. Guys, we have discussed about Durkheim. He solved the problem of illegitimate teleology by separating cause and function, but that's not the case with others, right? It is there. It is one of the common problem in all functionalist approach. So when we discuss in general the problems of functionalism so far, we need to discuss about that. Durkheim is an exception. Then proper use of methods. We have not seen any methods in Parsons. He just randomly talking about something, right? But exception is again, yes, not testable, right? Not testable. Why it is not testable? Especially, even Durkheim theory, do you think it is testable? He is collecting data from Arunta tribes and he made some conclusion. And what we discussed in criticism, the theory was there in his mind even before he take up the analysis. Actually, that is also not testable, even though he claimed that he's an inductivist and is a positivist. It is a theory which is based on quantitative method, but it is not testable. Parsons theory, forget about testing, right? You cannot even imagine how can it be tested. So it's a testability is a problem. Empirical application is a problem. So these are the main problems that you can see so far. Now, Mertons' approach need to be considered in the light of these problems of functionalism. So what Merton do is, Merton introduce three concepts, three postulates. That's what they will ask you. What are the modifications of Merton? So you need to talk about all these criticisms and then talk about the modification in terms of three postulates. The postulates are postulate of functional unity, and then the postulate of functional indispensability, and then the postulate of universal functionalism. I'll explain each of these in the coming session. Okay, so functional unity, functional indispensability, universal functionalism. Guys, what Merton says, he's saying it is not necessary that every constituent in a system is fulfilling some positive functions to the system. The approach of functionalism was like that, right? If there is a system, some constituents are there, it is there because it is fulfilling certain function. That's why it is there. If something is existing, it is fulfilling certain vital functions. This is the approach of functionalism so far. Even Durkheim and all these are the approach actually. But Merton says it is not necessary. If some parts exist, it doesn't mean that it is fulfilling some positive function. Even if you consider this class, if you consider this as a system, parts are whom? Who are the parts? All of you are the parts, right? Now, this is an exception. This class you leave it. Generally, if you take a class, there may be some good students. They will positively contribute. There may be some students, they will disturb the sessions, right? Just keep on switching on the mic and the video and all these issues will get the noise. But now we don't have any such issues. There may be students who don't, care about anything, right? They don't positively contribute. They don't disturb also. They just sit or they just sleep. So these are different situations. There may be disintegrating influence, right? Any parts may have disintegrating influence. That means that will be dysfunction for that particular system. So you also need to identify the disintegrating influence within the system. That means dysfunctions in the system. Now, guys, this is going to be very important because so far we never discussed about dysfunction in functionalism. This is for the first time we are trying to identify dysfunction or the disintegrating influence within functionalism. So this is one of the main reasons why this can be taken as a new functionalism or neo-functionalism. Then what he's saying is, functionalists is of the opinion that there are certain elements which are present which are indispensable. Indispensable means inevitable, because the functions which are fulfilled by that cannot be fulfilled by anything. Like family is fulfilling certain function and family is inevitable. Religion is inevitable. This is the approach of some of the functionalists. But Merton says it is not necessary that these are inevitable. There can be alternative. Whatever functions fulfilled by family, for example, when you're talking about emotional security, it is not necessarily family. The friends can also do that. What are the functions? Taking care of child. There can be child care center. Taking care of age. There can be old age homes, sexual gratification, everything there are alternatives, right? So never talk about functional indispensability of anything. That means nothing can be considered as purely inevitable. For everything, there can be alternatives. So he introduced two new concepts now in functionalism. One is dysfunction. The other is alternative. Now, thirdly, he's talking about there can be some situations where some elements are non-functional. Means just before I've told you, some students may be functional, contributing positively, right? Discussing the answers and everything. Some students will not contribute anything. They just sit silent. Okay, they may listen to the class, they may not listen to the class, not contributing positively, not making any disturbance also. This is what non-function, right? Actually, there is no function, there is no disturbance also. There can be some who may disturb the sessions. That's what disintegrating influence or dysfunction. I think that example will make you understand things very clear. So Merton actually talked about dysfunction, non-function, functional alternative. And finally, what he's saying is what we need to do. If I need to tell family is functional or not, you are a functionalist or whatever theorist you have, ultimately, if you need to tell these are functional, you need to take the net balance. Okay, net balance means identify the functions, identify the dysfunctions, non-functions, attach certain values to these. For function, this weightage you can give. For dysfunction, this weightage you can give. And finally, you take this sigma of functions and dysfunction and get the net balance. If it is positive, it is functional. If it is negative, it is dysfunctional. That is how you need to identify any social institution or any social phenomena that you're going to study. But again, there will be personal bias, right? You may attach more weightage to function, less weightage to dysfunction. That is again left to the investigator. So what all new concepts that we discussed now? We discussed 3 postulates. Within that, we discussed about functions, dysfunctions, non-function, alternative, net balance. These 4 concepts we have discussed. Merton also talked about manifest latent function. I'll introduce that later. And then Merton also talked about functional paradigm, which is a 9-step procedure. Okay, 9-step procedure which actually help you to make a functional theory. So this is what we are going to see today. And then tomorrow I'll introduce the next theory, that is the theory of anomie. With that, we will wind up Merton as well. All right, guys. So let's move to the PD. Any doubt here? So what we discussed is summed up all the approaches so far, the functional approach, identified the criticism of Comte, Spencer, Durkheim, Radcliffe, Brown, Malinowski, Parsons, all these thinkers, modified over this, solving these problems in terms of 3 postulates. Postulate of functional unity, postulate of functional indispensability, postulate of universal functionalism. So here actually in these 3 is actually talking about one dysfunction, the other related to alternative, the third related to net balance. In between is also mentioned about non-function. These are the 3 postulates. Then we need to discuss about concepts like manifest and latent function. See, for anything there will be outcome. Okay, outcome can be positive and negative. Positive is what you consider as function. Negative is what you consider as dysfunction. Now, when you come to okay, I'll just explain this here in the board. Anything, there will be outcome. You take any action, there will be outcome. You're preparing for this exam. Will there be outcome? Yes. Right? There can be some positive outcome, there can be negative outcome. Negative outcome means it will affect you very badly psychologically in case if you're not able to crack this, or you will lose your time and all those things. Or whatever action you do, there will be positive as well as negative. The positive is what you consider as function. Negative is what you consider as dysfunction. Now, guys, within function, you can further divide into manifest function and then latent function. Okay, dysfunction also you can divide into manifest function and latent, not function, dysfunction and latent dysfunction. Manifest means what is actually intended by the actor. It is nothing but intended outcome, intended function. Okay, this is unintended outcome, unintended consequences. Okay, so manifest means intended. When I'm teaching you, what is the intention here? So some outcome will be there. That is what intended outcome. When you're preparing for sociology, what is the intended outcome? You'll score good in sociology. What is the unintended outcome? You may do good in future because you have very good knowledge about society and all those things. So your personality will change, the way you think will change, and everything will change. It is not the way you will behave otherwise. A math student and a sociology student behave in a situation in a different way. Obviously, you will be more sensitive, right? So that is what unintended outcome. So intended outcome is actually considered as it is your meaning, your outcome. The function is for you. It is the individual function. This is something which is going to benefit the society. This is a societal function. Same as the case with dysfunction also. Intended dysfunction, you want to do something bad. So you want to murder someone. So maybe intended dysfunction. Okay, whatever it is. So that is the meaning actually. Okay, so intended dysfunction, unintended dysfunction. Okay, so for everything, there will be function as well as dysfunction. That means outcome means consequences. The consequences can be positive as well as negative, function as well as dysfunction. Okay. Just 1 minute, guys. I hope this is clear. Manifest and latent. Manifest is intended outcome, intended function, latent is unintended function. And in theoretical language, when we say it, we'll discuss it as objective consequences. This is objective consequences, and then subjective predisposition. So this is subjective predisposition. This is the actor's intended meaning. Subjective predisposition, what is actually expected to happen. And it is nothing but the meaning attached by the actor to the action. Intended outcome means meaning attached by the actor to the action. Can you guys think back where we discussed about this? Meaning attached by the actor to the action. I thought it is Marx you're saying, mine. Okay, so it is actually Max Weber, right? Okay, then later only I saw Max, then I realized that it is Max Weber. I got surprised when you're saying Marx. Okay, we discussed in Max Weber. In which context we discussed it? When we discussed to non-positivism. So when it comes to the perspective, you need to put it in perspective, or this is related to non-positivism, because we are talking about meanings, intended meanings, internal aspect, the meanings attached by the actor to the action. That is nothing but the intended outcome. Subjective predisposition of the actor. It is from the element of methodology. There is an from the side of methodology or perspective, if you look into, there is an element of non-positivism here. Okay, so manifest is nothing but intended. It can be function, it can be dysfunction. Latent, unintended, it can be function, it can be dysfunction as well. Okay, then he's also talking about middle range theory. Middle range theory means don't go with abstractions like what Parsons did. Don't go with two elementary phenomena. The problem with if you go with two elementary phenomena is you cannot generalize. If you cannot generalize, what is the purpose of conducting a study? So don't go with two elementary forms. At the same time, don't go with too much abstractions like what Parsons did. Because even though you generalize, Parsons also did the generalization. But is it of any use? No, right? Is it testable? Is it practical? Can we do it anything empirically? No. There is a problem with elementary, and there is a problem with abstraction. So you should be in between. It should not be too elementary. That means don't go for raw empiricism. At the same time, don't go for abstract generalization. It should be in between, like Durkheim's theory. Take middle range phenomena, conduct the study. But he's also talking about grand theory. There is a beauty. What Mertons says is you can make grand theory. He's not averse of grand theory. Make grand theory, but how? Make n number of middle range theory, combine everything. The advantage will be you will get a grand theory which can be tested, not like Parsons. That's about middle range theory. Then, guys, this functional paradigm is very simple. This is a 9-step process which is giving to make any study. And you can also follow this process to write any sociological answer as well. What he's saying is, first you have to select a standardized item. There should be some common pattern. It should be of middle range. That is the first step. If you are studying something, it should be of standardized pattern. It should have a regular occurrence. It should be of middle range phenomena. Okay, so that is the first step. Then what he's saying is, you need to explain the context in which you are going to select this or you're going to study this, because context is very important. If you're studying caste system, you need to tell that it is in Indian society, right? Otherwise, caste is something which is not heard of in any other society. So you need to specify the context. It matters a lot. Third, what he's saying is, you selected something, you explain the context, suppose social action or religion, whatever studies so far conducted, you have to go through that and make a summary of that. This is what post-factum analysis. So you go for post-factum analysis. Fourth step is identify the manifest function. That means function intended by the actors who are participating, the subjective predisposition. And then identify the latent function, the objective consequences. So manifest function, latent function. Then manifest dysfunction, latent dysfunction. And then also talk about the alternative. Is there any alternative for this? And then finally, talk about the net balance. This is how you need to make a theory. So first, select the standardized pattern of something which is having regular occurrence, a middle range phenomena, specify the context, post factum analysis, manifest function, latent function, manifest dysfunction, latent dysfunction, and then alternative, and then net balance. Guys, this is how you will write the answer also in sociology. You talk about something. First one you don't want to do because they will be giving you the question. Second, you need to talk about the context. Third, you talk about the theories, the post factum analysis you have to do. Then you have to talk about the manifest function. You have to talk about the latent function, right? And then manifest dysfunction, latent dysfunction, give the alternative, and then judge it. Net balance. Take the functions, take the dysfunctions, attach some weightages, sigma of all, not practically sigma, I'm just explaining that. And then you'll get positive, then it is functional. You're getting negative value, it is dysfunctional. That's it. This is what summary of Parsons. And then we'll go with the PDF. Things are very, not Parsons. We are still in that hangover. Okay, this is Merton. I don't know. So far I was discussing Parsons or Merton. What? I don't know what name I have used. Just now only I have realized it. But guys, this is a summary. This is very simple. Okay, fine. So next theory is very important, theory of anomie. And using that theory, you can even solve your ethics case studies as well. I'll explain how it can be done. The next theory is very simple also and very interesting as well. Because anyway, you will not find anything difficult in Merton. You'll go with middle range only. Okay. Any doubts so far? If you go with the PDF, then things will be more clear to you. I'll go faster. In case if you have any doubt, you have to refer the PDF or the videos. Okay. All right. Okay. Functionalism as a perspective is highly influenced by biological theories of evolution. The social reality is understood as constituting of elements providing one or the other function in the context of that reality only. Thus, functional analysis revolve around understanding specific aspect of reality which help in understanding the function or purpose of relevance or necessity. See, when you're talking about family, what the functionalist will do, they'll either try to identify the function or the purpose of family or the relevance of family or the necessity of family, right? Same as the case with religion, like that. Auguste Comte emphasis on understanding consensus in society for the purpose of understanding social phenomena. Later on, Herbert Spencer laid the foundation on structural functionalism by comparing society with an organism. We have seen that when we discussed about the scope of sociology. And then he was the first person to introduce social structure in sociology. But Spencer never developed any functional theory. Durkheim is considered to have established functionalism as a perspective by proposing specific functional theories. His theory of division of labor and religion are classical examples of structural functional theory. He further matured functionalism by introducing two things, that is separation of cause and function and use of scientific methods. You know why he's separating cause and function? Why? Illegitimate teleology. Why he's using scientific methods? Because he wanted to make it similar to natural science to give that legitimacy to the discipline. In his functional analysis, Durkheim emphasized only the integration of society. After Durkheim, famous British social anthropologist Redcliffe Dawn introduced the idea of necessary condition of existence. His structural functional analysis aimed at doing a functional analysis of elements of culture in the context of fulfilling one or the other necessary condition for existence. That's the anthropological functionalism. Another contemporary, Malinowski, gave comprehensive theory of needs, individual functionalism, or the psychological functionalism. And then Parsons worked on developing grand functional theory by using basic premises of all these and have taken functionalism to its logical conclusion by developing abstract grand functional theory in the form of requisite functionalism or analytical functionalism based on Agile model. These are the criticisms: ignorance of conflict, illegitimate teleology, identifying function and function. That means you can see all functionalists will only trying to identify function and function. This is what you can consider as functional bias. I've discussed this point when we discussed about the chapter on stratification, functional bias. Okay, you're trying to justify extreme forms of inequality. That is functional bias. Normal explanation of functionalism, something which is existing, it is fulfilling some vital function, that is functionalism. But if you try to justify this manual scavenging in terms of functionalism, that is functional bias. You say crime is normal, but if you try to justify like rape of a minor and all these are not normal, these are abnormal. These are, if you try to justify that, these are what you consider as functional bias. Okay, bias, personal bias. Practical applicability is a problem. Functional methods are not much used, right? Only in Durkheim we see that. What are the methods we discussed in Durkheim? Quantitative methods, right? Statistical techniques in suicide, multivariate analysis, and then indirect experiment in theory of religion, right? Okay, so then he's talking about what Merton did is, Merton analysis should be seen in the context of these criticisms. He wanted to take functionalism to a next level. So these are the most important points. 3 postulates, 1 question for you. Merton's postulates. This is 1 10 marker. So they can simply ask you this one as a 10 marker. Okay. And this is also another question. Merton's new concepts. What are they? It is nothing but dysfunction, non-function. Whatever we discuss, that is the new concepts. Dysfunction we never discussed so far in functionalism. Non-function, alternative, net balance, manifest latent function, manifest latent dysfunction, middle range theory. 10 new concepts you got. What more you need? 10 new concepts if you have very good answer with you. And then the paradigm. What is that? I've just discussed now that 9 steps. What are they? Select a standardized item, middle range phenomena, context, specify the context, and then post factum analysis. That's the 3rd one. Then manifest function, latent function, manifest dysfunction, latent dysfunction, alternative, net balance. Just need to explain. Things are very simple. There is nothing which is complicated, guys. If you can, these are very easy to remember. I think only you face some problem in Parsons. I've seen that in the explanation. Otherwise, these people used to explain very well. But now today, even you are struggling. Okay, so these are what the answer for all of these. Manifest and latent function is coming. And then the paradigm. Okay, the 9 steps is what I've mentioned here. And then middle range theory. Okay, let's quickly go with this. Postulate of functional unity, indispensability, and universal functionalism. So the first one, postulate of functional unity.